The stars looked different from Helios 7. Dr. Taeyang Kim had spent 3 years studying them through the station's observation windows, but tonight something felt wrong. The sensors showed unusual readings in the empty space beyond the gas giant they orbited. Something large was moving through the darkness. Taeyang called Captain Ji Ho-han to the research lab. The older man arrived quickly, his gray hair still messy from sleep. He looked at the displays and his expression changed. Years of military service had taught him to recognize danger, and this was definitely danger. The object appeared on visual scanners 15 minutes later. It was massive, 3 times the size of their research station. The hull was dark red with strange markings that looked like claw marks. This was not a friendly trading vessel. This was a warship. Una Park, the youngest engineer on the station, ran system checks on their defensive shields. They were research scientists, not soldiers. Their weapons were meant to clear space debris, nothing more. She looked at Captain Han and shook her head slowly. They could not fight this. The communication system crackled to life without warning. The face that appeared on their screens made several crew members step back in fear. It was enormous, covered in dark chitinous plates like insect armor. 4 eyes glowed orange in the dim light. The mouth had mandibles that clicked together when it spoke. The creature spoke in perfect human language, though its voice sounded like grinding metal. It introduced itself as Battlemaster Cravo of the Vorgothi hunting clan. The words that followed made Taeyang's blood run cold. The Vorgothi were hunters. They traveled the galaxy seeking worthy prey to test their skills. They had been watching humanity for months, studying them, learning about them. The Galactic Council had given them permission for what they called a proving hunt. The humans of Helios 7 had been selected as targets. Captain Han tried to negotiate. He explained they were scientists, not warriors. They had families waiting for them. This station was their home. But Cravo was not interested in negotiation. This was tradition, he said. This was honor. The humans should feel proud to be chosen. Jiho tried another approach. He activated their defensive weapons and targeted the hunting vessel. The small plasma cannons fired bright blue bolts across the empty space. They hit the Vorgothi ship and did absolutely nothing. The shields absorbed every shot without even flickering. Cravo laughed, a terrible sound that made the station's metal walls seem to vibrate. He explained the rules of the hunt. The 26 humans would be taken to the planet below, to an abandoned mining colony called Dust Hollow. They would be given 1 day to prepare. Then the Vorgothi would come for them. The hunt would last 7 days. If any humans survived, they would be freed. But no prey had ever survived a Vorgothi hunt. The station shook as the hunting vessel fired a weapon. It was not meant to destroy, only to disable. All of Helios 7's systems went dark except for life support. They were helpless now, floating in the void with no way to call for help. Vorgothi warriors boarded the station through the docking port. They were even more terrifying up close, standing 3 meters tall with forearms ending in claws that could tear through metal. They moved through the corridors like predators, not rushing, just confidently collecting their prey. The humans were forced into drop pods, small emergency escape vehicles meant for evacuating the station. Dr. Hana Lee, the station's physician, held the hand of a young botanist named Dongyun Nam who was shaking with fear. She whispered that everything would be okay, though she did not believe her own words. Minho Choi, the security officer, tried to fight back. He managed to hit one Vorgothi warrior with a metal pipe. The creature barely noticed. It picked Minho up with 2 arms and threw him into a drop pod like he weighed nothing. The Vorgothi did not seem angry, just amused. The drop pods launched one by one. Yuna watched through the small window as Helios 7 grew smaller above her. The hunting vessel stayed in orbit, watching, waiting. The pods fell through the atmosphere of the planet below, heating up until the windows glowed orange. Dust Hollow was a dead place. The mining colony had been abandoned 20 years ago when the valuable minerals ran out. The buildings were still standing but empty, covered in rust and dust. The sky was gray with clouds that never seemed to move. The air smelled like metal and old machinery. The drop pods landed in the central plaza, a wide-open space surrounded by broken structures. The humans climbed out slowly, checking themselves for injuries. Everyone had survived the landing at least. Small victories mattered now. Captain Han immediately took charge. He organized the crew, taking stock of what they had. Their supplies were minimal. Some water, basic medical kits, emergency rations for maybe 3 days. No weapons, no communication devices that could reach beyond the planet. They were truly alone. Taeyang explored the nearest building with Yuna. It had been a processing facility where miners refined raw ore. The equipment was still here, massive machines that had not moved in decades. Some still had power cells that showed faint charge levels. Yuna's engineering mind was already working, thinking about what could be salvaged, what could be used. The sun was setting when Krivo's final message arrived. His face appeared on a small display screen in the plaza, probably left there specifically for this purpose. He explained that the hunt would begin at dawn. His warriors would track them, test them, and ultimately kill them. But they should not feel bad about this. Being chosen as prey was an honor. The Vorgothi only hunted species they considered worthy of the effort. The transmission ended. The screen went dark. 26 humans stood in the gathering darkness, surrounded by ruins, knowing that tomorrow they would be hunted by creatures that had never failed to catch their prey. Donghyun started crying quietly. Others joined him. Fear was natural, human, understandable, but Captain Han did not let it spread. He raised his voice, making everyone look at him. These hunters thought humans were prey, he said. They thought this would be easy, that the humans would run and hide and die quickly. They were wrong. Humans had survived ice ages and plagues and predators on Earth. Humans had climbed from caves to reach the stars. Humans did not give up just because something seemed impossible. Minho Choi added his voice. They had 1 day to prepare. 1 day to turn this dead colony into something the Vorgothi would not expect. 1 day to stop being victims and start being survivors. Yuna looked up at the darkening sky where the hunting vessel waited in orbit. She thought about her brother serving in the colonial marines too far away to help. She thought about her parents back on Earth who would never know what happened to her. Then she pushed those thoughts away and focused on the only thing that mattered, surviving until tomorrow and then the day after that. And the day after that. The humans gathered in the largest intact building, a former warehouse. As night fell completely, they began to plan. They mapped the colony, identified resources, discussed tactics. None of them were soldiers, but all of them were intelligent, creative, and increasingly angry. The predator had marked its prey. But the prey was not going to make this easy. Dawn came too quickly. The gray sky lightened slowly, revealing the full extent of Dust Hollow's decay. Rusty buildings stretched for kilometers in every direction, connected by tunnels and walkways that had once been busy with miners. Now they were silent tombs waiting to become hunting grounds. The Vorgothi descended in the early morning light. Their dropships were sleek and predatory, landing in a wide circle around the colony. 8 warriors emerged, each carrying weapons that hummed with energy. They wore minimal armor because they did not need protection. Their own bodies were weapons enough. Krevo stood at the center of his hunting pack and raised one clawed hand. The ritual had begun. The hunt was now active. The prey had nowhere to hide. The first human to die was Donghyun Nam. He had panicked during the night despite Captain Han's words. When dawn came, he ran from the warehouse where the others were gathering. He thought he could hide in the outer ruins, find a way to survive alone. Fear made people stupid sometimes. Krevo selected him personally. The battlemaster tracked the young botanist through 3 kilometers of abandoned structures, following the heat signature and the scent of terror. The chase lasted 15 minutes. When it ended, Krevo stood over the body and performed a brief ritual, acknowledging the prey's attempt at survival. The other humans heard Dongyun's scream over the distance. It cut off suddenly. They knew what it meant. The hunt was real now. Death was here. Captain Han gathered everyone in the warehouse's basement level. This deep underground, they were harder to detect on thermal scanners. He made them face the truth directly. They could not outrun these hunters. The Vorgothi were faster, stronger, and had technology that could track them anywhere on the planet's surface. Taeyang spoke next. His scientist's mind had been working through the night. Dust Hollow was not just any abandoned colony. This had been a promethium mining operation. Promethium was incredibly valuable and incredibly dangerous. The mineral was used in advanced power systems, but it was also highly unstable when exposed to certain energy frequencies. The mines below them went down for kilometers. The Vorgothi probably knew about them but considered them death traps. Unstable tunnels, toxic gas pockets, and the risk of cave-ins made them poor hunting grounds. But for desperate humans, they represented opportunity. Yuna added her engineering knowledge. The old mining equipment was still here, and much of it still had power. Industrial cutters, drilling machines, heavy loaders, and the automated rail system that carried ore to the surface. These were tools designed to break solid rock. They could break other things too. Minho Choi had spent the night thinking about combat. He was not a soldier, just security, trained to handle drunk miners and equipment theft, but he understood basic principles. You survive fights by controlling the environment, using weapons your enemy does not expect, and never fighting fair. They had one advantage the Vorgothi did not consider. Humans were pack animals. They worked together instinctively, sharing ideas and building on each other's plans. The hunters were coordinated, but they operated as individuals seeking personal glory. The second day brought the first real test. A Vorgothi warrior named Charette tracked 3 humans to a collapsed storage facility on the colony's eastern edge. The humans were trapped inside with no apparent escape route. Easy prey, cornered and frightened. Charette approached confidently, energy blade activated and ready. The humans saw him coming through gaps in the wreckage. They should have panicked, should have begged for mercy. Instead, they waited. The Vorgothi warrior entered through the main door. The moment he crossed the threshold, Yuna triggered a remote detonator. The entrance collapsed behind him. Tons of metal and concrete sealing the only large exit. Charette was not concerned. He could cut through the debris easily, but the tunnel ahead was narrow, forcing him to move in a single direction. The humans had spent the night rigging industrial cutting tools along the walls. Power cells charged and triggers connected to a simple remote system. When Charette entered the corridor, Yuna activated them all at once. The cutters were designed to slice through solid rock. They were not precision weapons, but they did not need to be. Charette took 3 direct hits before he could react, his armor cracking under the focused energy beams. He survived by throwing himself backward, crashing through the weakened entrance in a shower of debris. The 3 humans escaped through a ventilation shaft they had prepared the night before. They were already gone when Charette recovered enough to pursue. For the first time in Vorgothi history, prey had wounded a hunter. Krevo monitored this development from his command center aboard the orbiting vessel. His warriors expected him to be angry, to order immediate, overwhelming retaliation. Instead, the battlemaster felt something unexpected: interest. These humans were adapting. They were learning. They were becoming dangerous. This was what a real hunt should be. Not the easy stalking of terrified prey, but a genuine test of skill against worthy opponents. He ordered his hunters to increase pressure but also to observe. What other clever tactics would these humans attempt? How far could they push before breaking? The battlemaster wanted answers. The third day brought more changes. 2 more humans died, caught in open areas where their preparations meant nothing against superior speed and strength. But the remaining crew had transformed the mining complex into something new. Tunnels had tripwires connected to explosives made from mining charges. False trails led to collapsed corridors. Emergency shelters were stocked with supplies and had multiple escape routes. A quiet data analyst named Jin Woo Song revealed unexpected talent. Before the research station, he had worked in logistics, managing complex shipping routes across multiple star systems. That same analytical mind now mapped Vorgothi patrol patterns, identifying gaps in their coverage and predicting their movements with increasing accuracy. The humans began striking back at isolated Vorgothi scouts. Not to kill them because direct combat was still suicide, but to wound, to slow, to make them cautious. They collapsed tunnels on pursuing warriors. They vented toxic gas into corridors where Vorgothi were searching. They used the mining colony's own decay as a weapon. By the 4th day, the dynamic had shifted. The Vorgothi had killed 7 humans total, but 2 warriors were wounded badly enough to withdraw from active hunting. The remaining 6 were moving more carefully now, checking corners, scanning for traps, coordinating their movements more tightly. Charette had become obsessed. The warrior who had been wounded by prey felt deep shame. He hunted with reckless aggression, determined to kill the 3 humans who had hurt him. This made him predictable. Jinwoo tracked his pattern and reported it to Captain Han. They set another trap. This time it was more ambitious. They lured Charette into the primary mining shaft. a massive vertical tunnel that dropped hundreds of meters into darkness. The Vorgothi warrior followed the thermal signatures of two humans, blade drawn and ready. The signatures were fake, clothing wrapped around heating elements. When Sharat realized the deception, he tried to retreat. But Minho was waiting at the entrance with a modified ore loader, a massive piece of machinery that could push tons of rock. He activated it, and the huge metal blade caught the Vorgothi warrior off balance. Sharat did not fall into the shaft. He was too quick for that. But he stumbled. His armor scraped against the metal walls, and for a moment he felt genuine fear. The prey was hunting him now. That night, Captain Han sent a message to the Vorgothi ship. It took some work to access the communication systems, but Yuna managed it. When Krevo's face appeared on screen, he seemed almost pleased to hear from them. Han's message was simple and direct. The humans were done being prey. They would not surrender. They would not run anymore. This hunt would end when they decided it ended, not when the Vorgothi claimed victory. And if the hunters wanted to continue, they would pay for every human life with Vorgothi blood. The transmission cut off. Krevo stared at the blank screen for a long moment. His mandibles clicked together in a sound that might have been approval or anticipation. His second-in-command asked what they should do now. The battlemaster's answer was unexpected. Continue the hunt, he said, but carefully. These humans had become interesting. They deserved respect, not just as prey, but as something more. Something the Vorgothi had not encountered in a very long time. Genuine opponents. The fifth day was beginning. 12 humans remained alive. The hunt continued, but something fundamental had changed. The prey had shown teeth, and the predators were no longer certain of their victory. The Vorgothi hunting pack gathered in their command center aboard the orbiting vessel. 8 warriors had descended to the planet's surface 4 days ago. Now only 6 remained in active combat condition. 1 was dead, crushed in a collapsed tunnel. 2 were wounded badly enough to need medical treatment. This had never happened before. Krevo's second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Thexal, was angry. He argued for ending this embarrassment immediately. They should collapse the entire mining complex, bury the humans alive, and dig out whatever bodies remained. The honor of the hunt had been satisfied. These prey had proven too troublesome to continue, but the battlemaster refused. His orange eyes glowed brighter when he spoke. This hunt had become something precious, something his people had not experienced in generations. Every other species they hunted either died quickly or surrendered within hours. These humans were different. They adapted. They fought back. They deserved to be tested fully. Thexal did not understand, but he obeyed. The hunt would continue as planned. Below, in the deep tunnels of Dust Hollow, the humans were planning something desperate. Yuna and Minho worked together on their most ambitious trap yet. They needed to capture a Vorgothi warrior's attention, make them commit to a pursuit, and then turn that aggression into a weapon against them. They created an obvious vulnerability in their defensive perimeter, an unlocked access tunnel with clear signs of recent human passage, footprints in the dust, abandoned equipment, even a small amount of blood on the walls. It looked like someone had been wounded and fled through this route. 3 Vorgothi warriors took the bait. Sharat was among them, still burning with shame and rage over his previous failure. They entered carefully but confidently. The tunnel was narrow but not dangerously so. The thermal signatures ahead showed multiple humans clustered in a large chamber, easy targets trapped in an open space. The chamber was the old primary sorting facility, where machines had once separated valuable ore from worthless rock. It was massive, with a high ceiling supported by metal beams. The floor was smooth and open. Perfect hunting ground. The Vorgothi entered and immediately realized something was wrong. The thermal signatures they had been tracking were just piles of heated clothing, wrapped around emergency heaters. The humans were not here. This was a trap. Sharat roared and turned to retreat, but Yuna was already triggering the sequence. The massive cargo doors at both ends of the chamber slammed shut with thunderous booms. Emergency lighting switched to red. Then came the sound that made even the Vorgothi warriors pause. The deep grinding of heavy machinery activating. The entire chamber was actually a massive airlock, designed for venting toxic gases during the mining operation. Yuna had spent 2 days restoring it to partial function. Now she activated the emergency purge protocol. The floor split open along maintenance seams. Beneath was an abandoned shaft that dropped 300 meters straight down into freezing water, remnants of underground flooding from decades ago. The air in the chamber suddenly vented downward with explosive force. Two of the Vorgothi warriors managed to grab onto support beams, their claws digging into metal. Sharet was not so lucky. He fell along with tons of equipment and debris plummeting into the darkness below. His scream was cut off by the impact with water. The chamber repressurized slowly. The two surviving warriors climbed back up, but they were shaken. One had cracked ribs from gripping the beam so tightly. Both had experienced something alien to their culture. Genuine fear of prey. Sharet survived the fall, but he was trapped in freezing water at the bottom of an unstable shaft. Another Vorgothi warrior would die trying to rescue him. The prey had claimed 2 hunters now and wounded 3 others. This was unprecedented. That evening, Tae-Yang gathered the remaining 11 humans in their deepest shelter. He needed them to understand what was happening, why it mattered. His scientist's mind had been processing patterns, analyzing behaviors, and reaching conclusions. Every species in the galaxy that achieved dominance did so through specialization, he explained. The Vorgothi evolved to be perfect hunters, strong, fast, with multiple limbs and superior senses. They became apex predators on their homeworld, and they carried that mindset to the stars. They hunted because that was what they were designed to do. But humans were different. Humans evolved on a death world where everything was more dangerous than they were. Faster predators, stronger competitors, more venomous threats in every direction. Humans survived not by being the best at any one thing, but by being adequate at everything and excellent at adapting. Humans were not apex predators. They were apex survivors. They outlasted threats instead of dominating them. They worked in groups, shared knowledge, built tools, and most importantly, they never accepted defeat as inevitable. That stubborn refusal to die was humanity's true evolutionary advantage. The Vorgothi hunted for glory. Humans fought to survive. One was a luxury. The other was necessity. And necessity always won eventually. The words gave the crew renewed determination. They were not trying to beat the Vorgothi at hunting. They were doing what humans did best, surviving against impossible odds. The 6th day brought the ultimate confrontation. Crevo himself descended to the planet's surface. The Battlemaster had watched enough from orbit. He wanted to test these humans personally, to understand what made them so resilient. He tracked Captain Han through the darkened tunnels, following heat signatures and sound patterns. The human was alone, separated from his pack, wounded too, based on the irregular gait and the blood trail he was leaving. This should have been an easy kill, but something felt wrong. Crevo had hunted for over 30 years across dozens of worlds. His instincts were screaming warnings. The human was not fleeing in panic. His movements were deliberate, controlled. He was leading the Battlemaster somewhere specific. Han led him deep into the mining complex, through sections that had been carefully prepared. The human was exhausted, bleeding from a cut on his shoulder, clearly at the end of his endurance. But he was not giving up. He was executing a plan. They reached a vast chamber, the primary mining shaft where ore had once been extracted from deep within the planet. The ceiling stretched up into darkness. Old equipment cast strange shadows. Crevo's thermal vision showed him completely alone with his prey. Captain Han turned to face the Battlemaster. He held a small piece of metal pipe as a weapon, useless against a Vorgothi warrior, but better than nothing. His breathing was labored, but his eyes were steady. The human spoke, his voice echoing in the empty space. He told Crevo that the Battlemaster was a worthy hunter, that his people had earned their reputation. But he also said they had made one critical mistake. Crevo was curious enough to ask what mistake. He could afford to give the human these final words before the killing strike. Han smiled tiredly and said the mistake was assuming the Battlemaster was hunting alone. The thermal image was sophisticated camouflage. The humans were not actually warm-blooded signatures in Crevo's vision. They had spent hours hiding inside heat-shielded equipment suits, old mining gear designed to protect workers from extreme temperatures. Their body heat was completely masked. 20 humans emerged from hiding positions throughout the chamber. They carried mining tools, industrial equipment, and improvised weapons built from salvaged machinery. They surrounded the Battlemaster in a wide circle. Crevo could kill Han easily. His energy blade would cut through the human in one strike, but the others would overwhelm him before he could escape. For the first time in his life, the Battlemaster faced genuine mortality. 1 against 20, surrounded with no support from his hunting pack. He expected them to attack, Instead, Captain Han did something unexpected. He lowered his pathetic metal pipe and spoke calmly. The humans would let Crevo leave. He could collect his wounded, retrieve his dead, and return to his ship. The hunt would end here, both sides withdrawing with honor. Or he could stay and learn what happened when humans were pushed past their breaking point. Han explained that humans did not fight with honor. They did not follow hunting codes or ritual combat. They fought with every dirty trick, every unfair advantage, every desperate tactic they could imagine. They fought to survive, and they would do absolutely anything required for survival. Crevo studied the human carefully. This was not a bluff. These prey animals had transformed into something dangerous. They would kill him if he forced them to, and they would probably die doing it. But they would accept that trade because survival mattered more than individual lives. The battlemaster asked why they would spare him. Why not take vengeance for the 7 dead humans? Han's answer was simple. The humans were not monsters. They were just people who had been forced into an impossible situation. They killed when necessary but did not seek death. The Vorgothi could leave with their honor intact, or everyone in this chamber could die together. The choice was his. Crevo considered his options carefully. He could fight and probably kill most of them before falling, or he could accept this offer and live to hunt again. His warrior pride demanded the fight. His tactical mind suggested the alternative. He chose wisdom over pride. The battlemaster lowered his weapons and stepped back. He told Captain Han that this hunt was postponed, not ended. He would retrieve his warriors and... The communication happened in the largest intact room of the mining colony, where ancient computers still functioned on emergency power. Captain Han stood with Taeyang and Yuna beside him. On the screen, Crevo's massive face filled the display, his 4 orange eyes studying them with what might have been respect. The battlemaster spoke first. His voice was quieter than before, less commanding and more thoughtful. He explained that his people had hunted for 10,000 years across hundreds of worlds. They had faced every kind of prey imaginable. Fast creatures, strong ones, intelligent ones that used tools and tactics, but none had fought like humans. None had wounded Vorgothi hunters. None had forced a battlemaster to retreat. Yet the humans had done more than just survive. They had spared him when they could have killed him. This was not prey behavior. This was something else entirely. Crevo wanted to understand why. Taeyang answered carefully. Humans were not like the Vorgothi, he explained. Humans did not hunt for sport or honor or to prove their worth. Humans fought only when threatened, only to protect themselves and their pack. They did not seek death even of their enemies. They sought survival. There was a fundamental difference in philosophy. The battlemaster considered these words. Then he revealed something the humans did not know, something that changed everything they thought they understood about their situation. The proving hunt had not been his idea. It had been sanctioned by the Galactic Council, specifically by certain member species who feared humanity's rapid expansion across the frontier. Humans had gone from a single planet to dozens of colonies in just 200 years. Other species took thousands of years to achieve similar growth. Some council members saw this as a threat. They wanted humans humbled, reminded of their place in the greater galaxy. The Vorgothi were chosen as the instrument of this lesson. Humans were supposed to die or surrender within hours, proving they were weak despite their technological advancement. Crevo's voice carried what might have been shame when he admitted this. His people had been used as tools of political manipulation. They thought they were engaging in honorable tradition, but they were actually just weapons aimed at a species that had done nothing wrong. Yuna asked the critical question that everyone was thinking. What happens now? If the Vorgothi report failure, what comes next? Do more hunters arrive? Does the council send warships instead? The battlemaster explained the politics carefully. The Vorgothi were powerful but increasingly isolated in galactic society. Other species saw them as barbaric, as relics of a violent past. If Crevo reported that humans had defeated his hunting pack, it would damage Vorgothi reputation further, but more importantly, it would prove that humans were dangerous. The council would not accept this. They would send something worse than hunters. They would send extermination fleets, claiming humans were too aggressive to exist safely among civilized species. They would frame it as necessary protection, but it would be genocide. Captain Han understood immediately. The humans had won this battle but created a larger problem. By surviving, they had proven themselves a threat. By defeating the Vorgothi, they had embarrassed powerful interests. Neither outcome led to peace. Taeyang saw the possibility first, his scientist's mind always looking for patterns and connections. The Vorgothi needed to restore their reputation. Humans needed protection from Council aggression. Both species had been manipulated by the same political forces. Perhaps there was a solution that benefited everyone. He proposed something radical. What if the hunt succeeded? At least officially. What if the Vorgothi returned to the Council claiming victory, with trophies and stories of human prey falling before superior hunters? The Council would be satisfied. The Vorgothi would maintain their honor. And in exchange, the Vorgothi would become quiet allies, sharing intelligence about Council politics and protecting human colonies from future tests. It required trust, which neither species had reason to give. But it also offered advantages that pure conflict could not provide. Crevo was silent for a long moment, his mandibles clicking softly as he processed this suggestion. It would require his warriors to participate in a deception, something contrary to Vorgothi tradition. But it would also demonstrate wisdom over simple violence, adaptation over rigid adherence to old ways. The Battlemaster agreed to discuss it with his surviving warriors. The communication ended, leaving the humans to wait nervously. Over the next day, something unexpected happened. Vorgothi warriors descended to the colony again, but not to hunt. They came to talk, to share stories, to understand these strange prey that had become something more. Sharet was among them, pulled from the freezing water and treated for hypothermia and broken bones. He sought out the humans who had wounded him, expecting mockery or cruelty. Instead, Dr. Hana Lee examined his injuries and provided medical treatment. The warrior was shocked. Why would prey help a hunter who tried to kill them? Hana explained it simply. Because he was hurt, and she was a doctor. Her job was healing, not revenge. Even enemies deserved medical care once the fighting stopped. This concept was alien to Sharet. In Vorgothi culture, wounded enemies were either killed mercifully or left to prove their strength by surviving alone. But this human female treated him like she would treat her own people, with care and professional concern. It challenged everything he thought he understood about weakness and strength. A cultural anthropologist named Subin Go spoke with several Vorgothi warriors, learning about their society. She discovered that hunting was not simple bloodlust but a deeply spiritual practice. The Vorgothi believed that by hunting worthy prey, they preserved the memory and honor of those they killed. Every hunt was documented, every prey species remembered in sacred texts. They were not mindless killers. They were warriors with a code, with traditions that stretched back millennia. They simply had a very different understanding of honor than humans did. Subin shared human perspectives in return. She explained that humans evolved on a death world, a planet so dangerous that almost everything was a threat. Humans survived by being adaptable, by working together, by refusing to accept that any challenge was impossible. That stubborn persistence was not courage or honor in the traditional sense. It was just biological programming, survive or die, with no third option. The conversations continued throughout the day. Vorgothi warriors shared stories of legendary hunts. Humans explained their exploration of space, their desperate fight for survival on hostile worlds, their dream of finding a place among the stars where they belonged. Patterns emerged. Both species were outsiders in the Galactic Council. The Vorgothi were feared and isolated. Humans were dismissed and manipulated. Both valued strength but defined it differently. Both had been used by political forces that cared nothing for their survival. Captain Han and Crevo met again, this time face-to-face in the mining colony. The Battlemaster had to bend nearly double to fit through human-sized doorways. They sat across from each other, predator and prey, hunter and survivor, trying to find common ground. Minyo Choi voiced the concern many humans shared. How could they trust people who had hunted them for sport? How could they forget the 7 dead crew members? How could they make friends with monsters? Krevo did not flinch from the accusation. He acknowledged that from a human perspective, his people were monsters. But he asked Minho to consider. From the Vorgothi view, humans were terrifying. They set traps that killed without honor. They fought with deception and tricks. They damaged warriors who should have been untouchable. If the Vorgothi were monsters for hunting, what were humans for hunting the hunters? The question had no easy answer. Both species had blood on their hands now. Both had reasons for distrust. But both also had enemies that threatened their survival. Yuna broke the tense silence with a laugh. She pointed out the absurdity of the situation. The most human thing possible was making friends with people who tried to kill them. And the most Vorgothi thing possible was respecting prey that refused to die. Maybe those contradictions were not problems but foundations for something new. The deal was finalized over the next hours. The Vorgothi would officially complete their proving hunt successfully. They would take trophies, provided voluntarily, by the human crew. Hair samples, blood, personal items that could be presented as evidence of successful kills. They would report to the council that humans had fought bravely but ultimately fallen, as all prey must. In exchange, the Vorgothi would share navigation data about council patrol routes, information about political factions, and warnings about other species that might threaten human colonies. They would become silent partners, watching humanity's back while maintaining their fearsome reputation. More importantly, if the council moved against humanity directly, the Vorgothi would provide material support, not as open allies because that would compromise both species, but as opportunistic raiders hitting council supply lines and creating chaos in strategic locations. The agreement was sealed with a ritual exchange. Each Vorgothi warrior received a token from a human crew member, small personal items that represented survival and determination. Each human received a claw from a Vorgothi warrior, sharp, dangerous, but given freely as a sign of respect. Dr. Hanali kept Sharet's claw on a chain around her neck. 3 months had passed since Dust Hollow. The research station Helios 7 floated in orbit once again, rebuilt with new technology and stronger defenses. But more importantly, it had been rebuilt with quiet assistance from Vorgothi engineers who arrived as labor reparations according to official records. In reality, they were the first visible sign of an alliance that existed only in shadows. The crew members who survived had scattered across human space. Captain Jiho Han now worked in the Colonial Defense Council, advising on security threats and alien contact protocols. His experience surviving the impossible made him valuable to military planners, who finally understood that humanity needed to think differently about galactic politics. Yuna Park designed security systems for frontier stations, incorporating lessons learned from fighting superior opponents with inferior resources. Her designs focused on defensive advantages, environmental control, and making any attacker pay dearly for every meter of ground. Dr. Taeyang Kim had written 3 papers on Vorgothi culture and biology, carefully avoiding any mention of the alliance, while establishing himself as humanity's foremost expert on the species. His work helped other humans understand that the galaxy's feared hunters were not mindless killers, but a complex civilization with their own codes and traditions. Life had returned to almost normal, but normal had changed. Everyone knew about Dust Hollow now, though the official story was sanitized. The Galactic Council believed humans had been humbled, taught their place, reminded of their weakness. In reality, humans had learned they could fight and win against impossible odds. But the peace was fragile, and the Council's fear had not diminished. The crisis came during a routine council session. Ambassador Kyung-ho Bae represented humanity in the Grand Chamber, where dozens of species debated policy and power. He was a skilled diplomat, trained in negotiation and compromise, but even his considerable talents could not prevent what was coming. 3 major council members proposed a joint resolution, the peacekeeping action. They claimed that human colonies were expanding too aggressively, that frontier settlements were encroaching on established territories, that humanity needed guidance from more experienced spacefaring species. The resolution authorized a council fleet to occupy 3 human colony worlds to ensure stability. It was presented as protection, as a helping hand to guide humanity into civilized society. In reality, it was colonialism, an attempt to control human expansion through military force. Kyung-ho argued against it passionately. He pointed out that human colonies were all in unclaimed space, that they followed all council regulations, that this action was not about law, but about fear. But the votes were already decided. The major powers had made their deals in private chambers long before the public debate. The resolution passed by a wide margin. Within 1 week, a council fleet would arrive at the colony world of New Pyongyang to begin occupation, but humanity had been preparing for this moment. The alliance with the Vorgothi had provided something invaluable: information about council fleet movements, political negotiations, and advance warning of threats. Defense Coordinator Daehyun Cho had spent 3 months quietly distributing resources, positioning forces, and spreading stories. The stories were carefully crafted psychological weapons. Every council species heard about the research station that fought back against Vorgothi hunters. The details varied depending on the audience, but the core message remained constant. Humans were dangerous when cornered, unpredictable in their tactics, and absolutely unwilling to surrender. Yuna Park worked with colonial intelligence to run what she called whisper campaigns. They leaked footage that showed Vorgothi warriors retreating from human traps, though the context was carefully edited. They shared intercepted communications showing council manipulation, proof that the proving hunt had been political theater rather than honest tradition. Most importantly, they made sure every species understood. Humans did not fight fair, did not respect traditional military conventions, and remembered every slight against them. The goal was not to appear strong, but to appear unpredictable and dangerously vengeful. It was not enough to stop the peacekeeping action vote, but it was enough to make council members nervous about the consequences. When Ambassador Kyung-ho stood before the council for the final vote, he did not beg or plead. He did not offer compromises or concessions. Instead, he told them a story about Earth, about a species that survived ice ages and plagues and predators. He talked about human persistence, about the refusal to accept defeat, about the dangerous creativity that came from being pushed into corners. Then he said something that made every species representative pause. "Do not mistake our kindness for weakness. We have followed your laws, paid your tariffs, accepted your judgments. But understand that kindness is a choice we make. So is what comes after." The vote passed anyway. The council fleet was authorized. 34 warships prepared to occupy New Pyongyang. Kyung-ho smiled, a cold expression that looked wrong on his diplomatic face. "Then we understand each other perfectly. You have chosen this path. Remember that when you face the consequences." The council fleet arrived at New Pyongyang 1 week later. The colony was not a major world, just a settlement of 30,000 people trying to farm alien soil and build new lives. The defenses were minimal: a few orbital platforms, some defensive satellites, and a small patrol fleet under Admiral Soyoung Lim. The council fleet commander, a Quillian admiral named Vextar, demanded immediate surrender. His ships outnumbered the human forces 6-1. His weapons were superior. His victory was mathematically certain. He gave the humans 1 hour to evacuate the orbital defenses and accept occupation peacefully. Admiral Soyoung Lim did not respond with surrender. Instead, she broadcast on all frequencies, making sure every ship in the system heard her words clearly. "You should have asked the Vorgothi why they stopped hunting us." Then space tore open as ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Not human ships, but Vorgothi vessels painted in war colors. Not just Kravo's hunting pack, but an entire war clan. 20 massive warships designed for brutal combat, carrying warriors who had built their entire culture around fighting. The council fleet was suddenly surrounded, outgunned, and facing opponents they had never expected to see as human allies. But the Vorgothi were not the only surprise. Across human space, colonies activated defenses that should not have existed. Weapons purchased from black market dealers with Vorgothi connections. Defense platforms built using engineering techniques shared in secret. Tactical systems designed by survivors who had learned to fight superior opponents. More ships arrived, but not council vessels. These were traders from frontier species, mercenaries from independent clans, and scouts from minor civilizations. All of them had been approached quietly over the past 3 months. All of them offered deals and alliances by humans who suddenly had powerful friends. The Galactic Council had wanted to isolate humanity, to prove humans were weak and needed supervision. Instead, humans had spent 3 months building a coalition of everyone the Council had dismissed or feared or ignored. Ambassador Kyung-ho appeared, on every screen in the Council chamber, his face broadcast across the galaxy. He revealed the truth that the Vorgothi had already confirmed privately. The proving hunt had been political manipulation. The Council had tried to break humanity through violence, and when that failed, they tried to break them through law. "You made us pray," Kyung-ho said, his voice calm but carrying weight. "You tried to humble us, to break us, to prove we do not belong. But you forgot something important. Prey animals survive by becoming dangerous, by adapting, by refusing to accept predation as natural law." The Council fleet at New Pyongyang faced a choice: attack and trigger a battle they might win but which would fracture the entire Council political structure, or withdraw and admit they had been outmaneuvered. Admiral Vexitar was a career officer, not a politician. He understood that he could destroy the human defenses and the Vorgothi war clan if he committed fully. But he also understood the cost. His own species, the Quillians, were already facing internal dissent about Council policies. A bloody battle here would strengthen those who wanted to leave the Council entirely. He withdrew, citing the need for further diplomatic negotiation. It was a polite fiction that everyone accepted because the alternative was war. The aftermath reshaped galactic politics. The Council was forced to grant humanity full member status with voting rights and military autonomy. The species that had backed the peacekeeping action faced economic sanctions from their own populations, who were tired of aggressive expansion policies. The Vorgothi formally announced their alliance with humanity, the first time in their history. They had considered another species worthy of partnership rather than prey. The announcement shocked the galaxy but also made sense. Both species were outsiders. Both valued strength and both had been manipulated by the same political interests. Other species began approaching humanity for trade agreements and defensive pacts. The coalition that formed at New Pyongyang became a loose alliance of frontier species and independent clans, all united by the desire to resist Council dominance. But the victory came with costs that numbers could not measure. 5 crew members from Helios 7 had died in